Hello, this is Mark. Good. How are you? Uh, we're set. Got a second.
Good. How are you?
Hang on a second.
All right, we're just gonna give a moment to see if Paul can get back on. I see that we are live now on YouTube, so that's all good. Guys, Paul can get right back on. All right, Paul, you all set?
Okay. I think we're all together. Here comes Rick. So we're getting it. We're getting it. Everybody's coming. There we go.
Ah, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Morning, Rick. All right, so we're ready to get started. So we will now begin. I just want to start off this morning by thanking you all and commending you on your commitment to this process and your great job of really taking the input from the members in the community and using that as the impetus for the key decisions that you've made throughout this process. Our focus today is threefold. It's to go through each of these 7 key strategic priorities and to see what edits are needed to be made, because they're really my interpretation of what I recorded during each of our previous strategic planning sessions. So there may be some inaccuracies that you want to address today. And then an opportunity to add any additional items for each of these categories that we might not have mentioned to date. And then third, and most importantly, for each of the action items under each of the strategic priorities, who is going to be responsible and when is the expected deadline for completion? Because without those 2 key components, they really don't have the power to motivate and to ensure achievement of these action items. So we just want to go through and identify who will be the responsible person or persons or committee, and when do we expect what it should be accomplished. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we get started this morning? Now, we have 3 hours allocated. We may take the full 3 hours or we may end early just because really what we're doing is going through and editing and adding to each of these areas. So depending on how quickly we move, we may be done early or right at 12 o'clock. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I sent you a packet. Oh, Mark, can you let me be able to share my screen?
Yes, hang on.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So these are our 7 strategic areas. We had a lot of good discussion. I think these really address those areas that came out through the survey and the focus group. So we just want to go over each of these today. We spent a lot of time on board communication. And as you read together with me, I'm not going to read each of these out loud, but as we go through each of these, some of them are complete by having addressed the deadline and the accountable parties. But as we move on to page 3, is there anything that we need to clarify or add to facilitate its usefulness?
You're on page 3, Jerry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to page 2.
Okay. So we have the first two, 1.1 and 1.1a.
I want to talk, 1.1 is the meat of this, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, 1.1a is just an addition to 1.1. So yes.
The way it works now is we ask for a chat session and Cezanne sets it up. Now, is that going to be moved to the communications committee is going to do that?
No, I think Cezanne will set it up. The communication committee will just shepherd the activity.
What's that mean? What's shepherd mean?
Well, in the
Well,
case
they'll
of,
take attendance, they'll take email addresses, they'll organize the room, they'll set up questions ahead of time. They'll make sure the PA system is functioning, all of that sort of thing. And they'll take notes, and then we'll distribute the notes after. But that would be the function of the committee.
so Chap, like we were in the last irrigation, the chat session with the condos, it would have been nice to have a moderator or somebody to manage, for instance, the Zoom portion, being able to be solely there to handle that situation. I think that, Jerry may be somewhere in this situation with this chat session and with this communications. We really need to look at how our technology here at the club is put together so that we can effectively manage some of these meetings where you've got people, not only they're in the audience going, hey, I've got a question, and they're standing up and screaming and yelling. But you've got the people at the front who are answering questions. There's a panel there. And then you've got 30 or 40 people on Zoom, all with their hands waving because they're trying to comment too. How do we effectively do that with the what technology exists other than what we have today to make that a more seamless, more effective platform for everyone? And I think that the communications committee, it would be helpful to have them there to be able to moderate, I guess, and ask questions. It's kind of like when you're watching. I had to stay home yesterday because I had this 24-hour bug. I ended up turning on TV, just catch the news, and caught the last part of Let's Make a Deal. And Let's Make a Deal has people in the audience, has people talking, and has people on the screen. And they can effectively manage people, in the different areas. I think we need some form of platform like that to be able to handle that.
Okay, I'm adding that. So that'll be 1.1D. Explore and utilize technology, utilize a technology platform that will allow for participation seamlessly for in-person and distance attendees. Good, that's a good point. Other than Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I'm not sure what's out there. I'm sure there are other products. Who would be taking the lead on that? That would be something that your office would do, Mark?
Yeah, we can look into it. I can look into it with my IT and with, I'm sure that there's plenty of audiovisual companies that have to deal with this
Yeah,
regularly, and I'll ask other clubs. I'm sure that all the other clubs are having to do the exact same thing.
is that something that you'll do by the end of this year or sooner?
I'll try to get it done before season, so put 10-1.
Okay, good.
Jerry,
Any other questions on this one? Yes, Lindia.
yeah, I'm looking at that first one again on that page. And I'm not so sure that all chat sessions should necessarily have residents from other communities. I think sometimes the condo people would like to have their meeting chat session without and be able to freely say what they want to say. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I don't want to get in a screaming match with people in the community at a chat session.
So you're suggesting that not all of them are open to anyone in the community?
Yeah, I don't know why they have to be. I don't know why you can't have a chat session with your own group. I don't know. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but.
I agree with you, Lindia. I think, when it comes to the single family homes, that may be one thing where, landscaping, it's germane to the single family homes. ASC modifications, it's all the same. But when it comes to the condominiums and they're dealing with 718 and they're dealing with management companies and they're dealing with their own reserves and their own stuff, that's really multi-unit dwellings, and really doesn't have a lot to do with the single family homes. I can understand the interested parties, but I kind of agree with you that, that's church and state a little bit, and it'd be nice if the condos could talk about condo stuff and not about single family home stuff, except for, this last one was for a community-wide project. So, I can understand if it's a community-wide chat session because it has to deal with the infrastructure of the community, such as it was a discussion on a clubhouse renovation or, something that was having to do with the assets of the entire community. But if it's going to be just one of those informational chat sessions that has to deal with the condos and coach homes, having them, because there's 304 of them, it's not just a little neighborhood or two people. I think you're kind of right.
Paul?
Why don't we leave that up to the board member who's sponsoring the chat session? They'll know best what's good.
Right.
There are certain things, like Chap had a chat session in his district about the referendum on rentals. And oftentimes it's good to hear or have people come in and hear that particular issue in another chat session if they couldn't make theirs, for instance. And that would be up to Chap to say, yeah, sure, come in, I don't have a problem with it, or I want this to be germane to my neighborhood only.
So when each of those chat sessions are advertised, the board member who's setting it up will indicate whether this is a meeting for their neighborhood or it's open for all.
That's what I would propose.
Brownie?
At one point, we've got 2 at-large directors. So theoretically, their chat sections will be open to the whole community. So I assume they also are supposed to have chat sessions. So that could handle anything that should be covered with all communities. The two at-large
Right.
directors.
Okay, good. All right,
And
good,
do
good
the
clarification.
at-large directors- Do the at-large directors have chat sessions?
It says each board director, I'm reading what we said.
I know, I'm just asking, do they?
I'm reading what it says, each board director.
Well, let's put it this way, there's no prohibition against.
Okay.
Good, all right. Now let's move on to 1.2, develop a quarterly report from the Board of Directors. When will that first quarterly report go out?
When is the start of the official new year? Is it the physical year
Yes. However,
or is it after the annual meeting?
the annual meeting is at the end of March. So quarterly, if you wanted to do it by who was elected and how they were managing as being a part of the board, you might want to have that skewed as a.
Well, let's do it that way,
Do
after
it.
the annual meeting.
It'd be like June, it'd be weird because it'd be June and September if you did it that way and there's nobody around and there's very little to do with people in town. So I don't know whether or not you want to do it quarterly during season such as October, December, and maybe and March before the meeting. So you have, those three at the times when there's the most people here to report on, rather than you're going to put something out in June or September. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of meat. And however, that's.
Well, maybe we do it quarterly and do one extra during season.
So we'll do it June 1st, September, June, September, December, and March. Maybe one extra one in there.
Yeah,
Good. Okay, we set a deadline ongoing for 1.3, but this is going to take some work to get it implemented, right? Establish electronic messaging system. So who's going to help to establish that in your eyes? Where people can provide information ahead of a board meeting, ask questions germane to the agenda.
I think that has to be part of the communications committee's responsibility.
Okay,
Plus the agenda of the board meeting, a lot of times is not public at the time that it's announced, because it's sort of changing all the way up until probably the, let's say the board meeting next week is on Thursday. We may not have the agenda squared away until Monday. And then that's when the packet goes out, because we're waiting on reports from different committees to get themselves together, which normally they do that over the weekend if they've had meetings, and then they'll get that in. So the community at large really doesn't have a chance to view the agenda per se in a timely manner, because it's fairly fluid. So I don't know if that one, I don't know whether or not we want to say that it has to do with the board topics that will be addressed at the next meeting, more as if they have questions that they want addressed at the next board meeting. Does that make sense? That's
Yeah.
like members speaking, which they all have the opportunity to do. They can all either write a letter, come in, have somebody speak for them, or write a letter saying, you know, I've got a real issue with the trees in my backyard, or I've got, you know, I don't like the new colors that I mean, it's anything. But having to deal with the agenda, I can tell you, we haven't completely squared away the agenda for Thursday's meeting. We're probably gonna send out the packet either tomorrow or Monday. And if that's the case, then, you know, you'd have to figure out how to get that to the community and then figure out how to get back the questions, and it makes it difficult.
Other thoughts? So if we don't make it related to the board agenda, then you're opening it up for people to be posting everything and anything in terms of a question to the board to be addressed.
Well, I think that's okay. If we're doing these quarterly reports, there may be some questions about what's going on or what's taken place. And I think we should be open to that. I doubt if we're going to have a whole lot, but who knows how this will unfold? I guess we'll just have to try it.
Yeah, okay.
But I think I would say that I think it's just it may opinions and questions and comments on board topics. You're right, Jerry. If we take away what you've just highlighted, I think that'll work. Because that's what it does is, I mean, one of the things that was part of the focus groups and whatnot is saying they didn't feel comfortable addressing the board and getting their questions answered. And they didn't feel like the board was telling them transparently what they were up to behind closed doors, which, you know, in reality isn't a whole lot. But that will, at least if we send this out to everybody stating that we're open for that, I think that gives them an opportunity to feel that we're at least open for that type of communication, and which is solving some of the strategic issues from the focus groups that you've heard about.
Mhm.
So we can either deal with it at the board meeting or one of the chat sessions too. It could be good fodder for a chat session.
Well,
Good.
well, right now, a resident has two choices. If they want to ask questions, give opinions, or comments, their choices are sign up to talk or to submit a question or comment that can be read, you know, at the board meeting. That's what we do now, right? What I don't quite understand is, what is this ongoing electronic messaging system? I don't, what is that?
They say just something like email. They can send to an email address their questions to the board. That would be how they're
Okay.
communicating electronically.
So what we need to do is send out a communication telling people how they may ask questions, give opinions, or make comments. And
Right.
that would include speaking at the meeting, signing up to speak at the meeting, or submitting a question to a, for now, yet to be determined messaging system, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so there's nothing really fancy about this new electronic messaging system. That's good.
Is Cezanne on the call here?
No, I don't think so.
Well, she may have a recommendation as to a box where these questions would go,
Yeah, that'd be great.
so we could monitor it and figure out and also direct it. It could go to an individual board member, could go to a committee chair, could go to an entire committee. It could be an item for the quarterly message to the community. So if we had a clearinghouse where we can deal with this, and I think Cezanne could probably uh, tell us what she thinks on that matter.
Okay. So I'll add her name. Do we want to have this started for next season? So we'll say October.
Yeah, I think that October would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if it might be even one of those things that we put to the communications committee.
Yeah, I was just thinking that would be another item in the clearinghouse.
Well, unfortunately, open, you'd have to set parameters on it, because if, you'd have to have it so that this is John Smith. I live on, 1422, Sterling Oaks Drive. I have a question about X, or a comment about Y, then that's fine. I think that there could be a myriad of anonymous chitty chat sessions, kind of like next door, that you wouldn't want to have to deal with. You may want to set parameters on this, give it something so that it can be vetted. In other words, here's these, and this would be the communications committee's responsibility to maybe monthly go through the comments and questions, bring those ones that they feel are germane to the board and not to
Yeah.
a gossip session.
1.3A, addresses that, and that would be for the communications committee to establish that process.
Right.
All right. We said that we also want to have some board meetings in the evenings for working adults. That's just a matter of selecting a meeting in the future on an occasional basis.
How many people showed up at the meeting the other night? Chap, you were there?
20,
Yeah, I
25.
was there. Yeah, 20 to 25. And there were about 30 to 35 on
Yeah. On
Zoom.
Correct.
Mark, did we see any new faces?
One. Honestly, one in the audience that was there and specifically just said, thank you. I work down in Marco currently, and having this at night is good for me. But he was the only one that made any comment about having it. Thank you for having it at night.
Well, I guess we could give it a try again.
It's not bad to have one during season, just to say
Yeah.
that we did do it. We know in the past that it really doesn't bring out an enormous amount of more people, but it's a good faith gesture. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, let's turn to 1.5, meeting minutes to include live links to the YouTube recording of the meeting. Is that something that's easily done? And who would be responsible for doing that?
Well, those could be posted, those Cezanne could post that to the website, and therefore the YouTube residual recordings that have been made could be viewed, because I think they're all there from way back when. So maybe that would be something she would just do, because she posts the minutes to the website, and then once they're on the website, she could do that.
Okay. So I'll say Cezanne for this. When would she start being able to do that?
Soon, today, or
Okay.
maybe next week. We just have to check with her to see how that works.
Yeah, I'm gonna put July 23. Good.
Question, how long do those YouTube recordings stay around? Does anybody know how long do those YouTube, you wanted to look at a YouTube meeting for a year ago, is it available? How do you get to it?
I can't tell you. I know that when I look up how to fix parts of my car or my refrigerator, that they go back in time pretty well. So at least they're there for a couple years.
So your account doesn't have anything where things are sunset?
Not that I can't answer that. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
I think they're on quite a period of time,
There is a
probably at least
limit,
a year, and that's all we'd be concerned about.
All right, 1.6, the Board of Directors will provide an annual charge. We said April, which would be after the annual meeting. The committees would each get a charge from the Board of Directors, what they need to be focused on based on the strategic plan. And then based on that, each committee will create an annual plan that would detail their goals for the year. When should they be able to turn that in? So 1.6, we said April, that would be coming from the Board of Directors or the board chair. 1.7, when would you want as a board, each committee to create their annual plan?
I would say in April and maybe a deadline of May 1st.
Good.
That would be a short while after the annual meeting and a good time to take a deep breath and say, what did we do right and wrong this past year? How do we fix things and where do we go from here?
Well, it has to be after it has to be after the board approves the composition of the committee. That happens at the April board meeting, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
So I think the deadline for this should be May 15th.
Okay.
You have to have a committee first.
Well, you could have it why don't you put it as May? You could put it as May 15th or prior to the May board meeting. So that
Right.
the board could review those committee assignments and say that sounds good and approve them.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I like that.
Could I add something? I'm not sure, I only can speak for the activities committee, but so you have your new members in April, then you have your organizational meeting, which I'm going to assume is sometime in April or May. And then they're going to do an organizational plan in that little period of time. And do they just found out what the budget is? Nicole hasn't, I mean, they sit down in July, don't they, Mark, do all the planning?
Who does?
The committee, activities.
The activities committee works July and August on the next year's budget.
Okay.
But I
so
don't think that this has to deal with budgetary thing. I think this has to do with the strategic plan and how the strategic plan interfaces with these committees.
Okay.
I think it's a facet of the committee that they have to understand that if there's something to do with activities such as expanded activity hours or the more activities are needed or something that's coming from the strategic plan, that they probably have to fold that into what their mission is for the year. I don't think it's going to detract or take away from their, you know, if you want to call it their daily schedule or their work. It wouldn't change, for instance, tennis is gonna meet, ASC is gonna meet, finance is gonna meet. I don't think that they're gonna be changing their whole world. The only thing they have to do is be cognizant of the strategic plan and maybe have a part of their mission or their goals as, you know, to include what's necessary from the board and the strategic plan.
Okay, okay.
Does that make sense to all of you?
Sort of.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll say this because John Mulligan's not on the Zoom, but the committee doesn't change that much either. So,
Well,
short,
we got 2 new members.
yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about.
I
So,
do.
so I think they can keep up with what's going on and weave it into their meetings.
Okay,
All right, and then these plans will be approved by the board, and then once they're approved, they're gonna be posted for better communication.
Oh,
All right, we said each committee will designate a committee secretary who will be responsible for the meeting minutes. We don't have to put in a responsible party, but we just want to make sure that'll be part of their charge this upcoming year to make sure they do that. And then Suzanne, the committee secretary will submit to Suzanne the minutes so they can be posted within 10 days of the meeting on the website. I see that's an error here. And then each board liaison will be, to each committee should be on the agenda of each committee meeting to provide board updates and receive committee feedback. All right, for board communications, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think we should discuss today? Anything else under the umbrella of board communication? Given that the 2 lowest rated items was voicing opinions and suggestions to the board and communication from the board of directors, you've done an admirable job of providing a bunch of action items to enhance the communication to and from the community. So any other thoughts before we move on? All right. So let's talk about club amenities, because this is what we talked about at our last meeting. So some of these we haven't had a chance to review and discuss. So Bocce, this is already in process. You're just taking bids right now. And a lot of the pool ones are going to fall to the pool committee. But as you review these, provide me with any comments. So we're on page 7 right now. 23-24 season for the deadline for the pergola. The GM's responsible for that. Does it sound right?
We're working on it.
question here. We've got an action list of things that involve money and budgets and scheduling that haven't been approved by the board, yet we list them as action that we're going to take. I find trouble with that. We haven't approved these yet. We're basically say we're going to do them.
Okay. So instead of saying
Problems with
add,
the process, okay, this is not appropriate to me for us to be approving the, I mean.
no, Brownie, your points are good. So instead of add, a better word would be explore, because it would go through the process. So that's good feedback, and I appreciate that. Extend pool hours, and with extending pool hours, there's a couple of steps that are involved. Mark, last meeting, you talked about how the lighting has to be certified by a lighting engineer and has to be just through procedural steps to get changes to liability insurance and some type of state approval of a change in the license for the pool hours.
We've contacted the 2 engineers in town. We're trying to get them to actually commit to coming out here and doing that work. We've contacted our insurance companies and told them we're moving on this. our current insurance companies said that they're gonna have to go out and look on the marketplace for these for a liability coverage on a pool that's unattended in the evening. They just feel that's a risky, even if it's lit, there's no staff, there's no oversight, so there's a little bit of concern on the insurance carriers part. And so we're trying to look at doing that, because several other communities or hotels, et cetera, other clubs all have pools that are open later, so they've got to have somebody that's covering that. So I think if it's certified, well lit, and it's licensed, that will go a long ways to getting the liability coverage on the insurance.
So based on the actions that you've already taken, your plan is to have this ready for next season.
We can try, but I will, as I said, we're exploring it. We don't know the cost involved. As we come through those steps and those areas, we're going to be bringing those to the board for their review. I hate to say this, but is there a large concern from the community and focus groups, or from just the pool committee, that the pool should be open later? Is it something that was anywhere in having a rallying cry that we needed it, other than, I want to say 10 to 12, 15 people, or is it something like, because the pool is so crowded during the daytime, 100 of us would like to go in at night and be able to have it until 10 o'clock in the evening? I just don't know that. I'm just trying to get some information if we're asked.
Well, first of all, what you just did, Jared, at 2.2 is good. I mean, that just follows up on what Ronnie was saying. We're not doing it.
Right.
We're investigating it. 2.2A is a natural flow from 2.2.
Yes.
In terms of what Mark was just talking about, is I'll just make up a number. If we find out that it's going to cost an outrageous amount of money to pull this off, then I think we don't do it, because I don't see a tremendous demand to justify it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Mark, can I ask a question? Are we probably talking about underwater lighting? Is that what we anticipate?
Both. As far as I know, it's both. You have to have the appropriate underwater lighting, so that the bottom of the
Could be adding underwater lighting.
possibly either changing the lights in the pool perimeter. It depends. They just have to come and do a study on that. The pool was never designed to have nighttime swimming, so I don't know if the lighting that's in the walls of the pool is designed to have that.
But we are talking about underwater lighting then.
But
That's a yes. Then.
We have underwater lighting.
You have to retrofit it.
Yeah, we have underwater lighting. We just don't know whether or not it satisfies the candle power or the
Or we
light.
could increase it.
Yeah, I think we need more data. Let's wait to see what happens, get some more data, find out what it's going to cost, find out if it's even possible, and then we'll have the discussion.
Oh,
I think it's
Steve,
premature. Premature.
Steve joined us. I didn't see you before with us.
Well, hi, Brownie. How are you?
Okay, good. All right. 2.3, looking into, again, I'll change the language here, explore having a pool monitor next season. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to contact our current security service to find out whether or not they have somebody that could assist us in this endeavor and get some quotes and find out what it would cost to have the person on a inconsistent regular basis during the season to monitor the people and check for access control at the pool.
So instead of having a volunteer, you're using the security services that you already employ to help facilitate that.
That was my feeling. I think it's difficult to have one of your own. Well, there may be some volunteers, but are they gonna be there at all given times? Are you gonna have a series of volunteers? Are you gonna have, how are you gonna monitor that and make sure that they don't have something to do? It'd be easier to have a professional institution just from an objective viewpoint, not subjective, be able to manage that. And once people knew that we were doing it, I think that any people that were trying to, jimmy the system would find out that they couldn't.
Well, and a third party is more likely to gain compliance versus someone dealing
I
with.
don't think a volunteer is gonna be that comfortable doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So you are going to continue to work on exploring that, Mark.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then 2.4, going through the rest of this page, are all things that you've mentioned the pool committee is going to be looking into. Enhancing pool rule signage, developing a pool maintenance plan, developing a plan and schedule for incremental replacement of the pool furniture, developing a longer-term plan for expansion of the pool seating area, are all things that the pool committee will be responsible for.
Those are all things for sure that are on our agenda and we're going to look at and explore. Again, if we come to any kind of conclusion and we decide to bring something to the board for action, we'll do it at that time. But yes, those are all accurate things that we're talking about, but we're not ready to come forward with any motions or anything for the board to consider at this time.
Good. And these would be things that will represent a board giving a charge to the committee, like the pool committee, reinforcing these are the type of things that the board would like the committee to look into.
Back to
Correct.
2 points. Go back to 2.7A.
Yeah.
The only place that I'm aware of we could put in an auxiliary pool is in that open area behind some of the condos. I don't, I think that would be great, but do we really feel we want to give the go-ahead to explore this, is my question.
I think the strategic plan has to look 3 to 5 years out, or 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. I think it's just a long term. This doesn't have to be decided on by September. I think that this is something where it can be a pot on the back of the stove that doesn't need to be brought up to the front right now. I think, but it is an opportunity. There is space. There is possible need, and to some degree, some ideas. The only detracting thing that I've heard from it, from some people, is the fact that they don't want to pay for it. However, that's that's in the case that we know that for almost everything there is. So
Wouldn't hurt to get a cost anyway.
yeah.
Who's responsible? We're going to follow up at all on this. Again, who's responsible with the understanding that this isn't the front burner on high?
Right here, I'll just add, 3+ years. So in terms of the timeline, and again, it's just the instead of plausibility, I should say feasibility and location. So long-term, just investigating where it would go, what it would cost down the road.
Well, Mark, are you
Jerry?
willing to take that on in your spare time?
I think what I'll do is I'll do some investigative work on it,
All right,
as I move through time. Yeah, give me some time on it. I'll take
Okay.
a look at it slowly.
Mark, did that come up on the strategic plan?
No, I just captured that at our last meeting when I was taking notes, that we talked a little bit about that long-term, we should look into having an auxiliary pool.
Doesn't necessarily have to be there. It can be somewhere else.
Really? Imperial?
Upstairs.
well, but Linda makes a good point. If it wasn't as a result of some heavy input from the survey, why are we doing it?
Well, remember, this says 2.7A. We know that the pool is the highest used amenity, and that came out loud and clear in the survey. And so we know the pool is the most popular aspect of the club experience and the club amenities, and it's overcrowded. So just naturally, without it specifically being said in the survey, how do we accommodate the demand for the pool? One way of doing that is just to explore the feasibility and if there's a location to have a second pool.
I
So, I mean,
totally agree. Totally agree. It was a high priority that the pool is overcrowded. How we deal with that is probably why that's there. But
Right.
their priority was that the pool is definitely overcrowded and we could try and solve that. And that's just one of the possible solutions to do that.
Right, and we have a wildcat pool that can be used by wildcat people. Is that used a lot?
Only during the season, like our pool. Most times it's empty. And then during January, February, March, there's people there, but it's pretty much like the big pool. Just those 3 months, it's got anybody or crowded at all, I would say.
Right. Yeah, I think the draw for our pool is the cabana, the food service, the beverage service, and all the activity around there. I mean, the covered shelters and all that. So I don't know, unless you can recreate something like that, your pool, the pool is always going to be a bigger draw.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, looking at the next page, we don't want to get bogged down too much in conversation here with 2.7B, but we did mention that if we want to expand the pool space, one way of doing that is to move into the top lot, and that would have more space for the cabana and pool area. One way of doing that is to convert that into, at least look into maybe a splash area.
Or we could put another pool back there.
Yeah. 2.8, look at a portable pool water cooling system. 2.9, come up with a plan for necessary updates to the pump house that we know are going to be forthcoming. So be proactive in that regard. So those are the items for the pool. Are there any other pool related items?
What is 2.8? Refresh my memory. What?
Mark suggested this, that there is a way that sort of shoots water,
Like
a cannon that shoots water into the pool, and the act of sucking it up and shooting it back into the pool actually can lower the temperature of the pool by a few degrees during these hot summer months, where without any assistance, the pool temperature could be in the 90s come mid-July.
So it's like a cool down cannon.
Yeah.
That's it.
That sounds pretty good to me. But that's up to the pool committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all down the road.
Yeah. We talked about the pickleball. some of that is already in process where you're looking at it. Again, we know that brownie, that would involve a lot of decisions by the board because it's commitment of dollars. So this is already in process, pursuing expansion by looking at the costs and getting bids to see the feasibility. All right, 2.11, what we said last meeting, we'd be going forward for pickleball, monitor interest and volume of play as a function of time, and determine going forward.
Somebody has the
Steve.
YouTube going
Hey,
on in the
Steve.
background.
Steve, could you put yourself
Turn your volume off. I got it.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so for pickleball, we said going forward, long-term, we want to monitor the usage, determine if there's going to be a need for adding a dedicated, on a part-time basis, staff person to oversee leagues and programming and provide lessons and other operational oversight. We'll need to monitor pickleball that 5 years from now, there might be a need for more than 5 courts. And of course, any future expansion or additions like that might necessitate a membership fee. Because a pro pickleball would then be growing similar to tennis in that regard. So that's all long-term type of things to monitor as we look forward into the future.
Can you hear it?
Any comments with pickleball? All right, 2.12, we need updates. We need a plan for updates in the fitness room, including flooring and lighting and the ventilation system. Is that something that's within 2 years, Mark, or is that longer term?
Well, it can be explored. We looked at redoing the flooring part of the renovation that got shot down. Lighting, we changed it to better lighting. However, it's in my opinion still not as good as it could be. And the ventilation system would be air conditioning. That to renovate that air conditioning system is going to be some major dollars and would require some engineering and I don't know the costs associated with that. So that's something that would have to be investigated over time. I'm not sure how quickly that can be done.
Okay. But those are all things that you think need to be explored at some point, all 3 of those.
At some point in time, the updates, it should be done. The floor is the original flooring. It hasn't been changed in 20 years.
Well, I'm not sure that the floor needs to be changed. Why would you need to change that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have any more of its bouncy. It's been compressed and it's fraying around the edges. It's got some issues where the machines have been. So I just think that at some point in time you may want to look at putting in a new floor. It's not $100,000. It's probably only about $6,000 or $7,000, which would be a great upgrade to that area. But the lighting is something that would have to be an engineered situation, electric, and the ventilation would have to be a much more comprehensive endeavor.
I think the ventilation is something we should definitely consider. I think that's the major problem down there. I think we can throw the other things in to take a look at long range. I don't think they're critical, but I think the ventilation system is important.
Mark, does it have a dedicated ventilation system?
It has its dedicated AC system, yeah.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Okay, good. All right, 2.13. This would be a longer term, but explore future expansion of the fitness space within the current footprint of the clubhouse by either moving into the multi-purpose room or outsourcing laundry and moving into the laundry room space. So while people aren't, members aren't necessarily conducive to growing the footprint of the fitness by expanding the clubhouse, because that's a bigger cost. We do know that fitness is increasingly important to newer members, and we know that fitness is one of the highest used amenities overall. So one way of addressing the needs of fitness without expanding the clubhouse would be using the current space. Any comments or reaction to that? That'd be exploring, that would be a longer term exploration.
I think a priority might be the laundry room over the multi-purpose room.
Yeah,
I would hate to give up more space for multi-purpose. That's used often enough and it's critical sometimes.
mhm.
I think that you have to understand that if we're gonna get rid of the laundry room, we have to still find a place for all the janitorial supplies, all the janitorial equipment, someplace for at least that to be stored and utilized in an effective manner. The second part is that if you're going to get rid of all the linens that we currently have, that we've invested in as an asset over the years that we use in the dining room and whatnot, then you're going to go to a linen company, that the cost of maybe doing that is going to be applied directly to food and beverage operations, which will increase the subsidy expenses. It's just something that you need to be aware of. You have to understand that when we clean, vacuum, mop, wash down all of the toilets, all of the floors, all of the areas within the clubhouse, the cabana, even going down to the Wildcat pool that we utilize, that storeroom for all its janitorial supplies. And we have to have a place to at least manage that system. The store, we have no storage facility within the existing confines of the clubhouse to move that to. So that would have to be investigated before breaking down that wall and just moving into that room
Right.
and removing those assets.
I'm going to draw your attention to 2.15 as well, because one of the things we also mentioned that is a separate conversation last meeting was that if there's any addition to staff in the future, then there's going to need to be looking at where that staff member would be located, because they're already tight on space upstairs in the clubhouse for the administrative offices. So 2.15 was examine potential reconfiguration of clubhouse space to best meet needs of the evolving club. So, you know, looking at the pro shop or looking at the size of the lobby or things of that nature, sometime in the future, maybe looking at the laundry room would go hand in hand with a complete re-examination of how best to utilize the space in the clubhouse to meet the needs of the community.
Yeah, let's keep in mind the strategic plan said this fitness room area is a big deal. It seems like that came through very clearly. So I think we have to address that. In terms of storage for materials and cleaning supplies, we'll have to find a place for it. We built that storage area with the clubhouse expansion. That's an area we might look at to share products that are needed along the way. I guess we'll just have to look at that. But if the strategic plan is saying the fitness area is a big deal and highly used, we're going to have to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna be a contrarian here. And that is that regardless of the strategic plan initiatives, the one thing that comes out clearly is that regardless of any needs or changes, the mantra to not spend any other monies on anything is the overriding primary factor. If you can get it done within what you have and put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, that's satisfactory. However, if you need to expand and spend some money to do it, no. We don't want to be asking or raising dues or changing any of this to accommodate the needs of the members. They're going to have to understand that we're going to try to pack what we've got strategically for these needs and expansive changes over time with no extra expense involved if possible. And I'm kind of wondering how that's going to be done. I think there's got to be an understanding from the community that as the business grows, as it changes and the needs grow, that there's going to probably have to be need for additional monies to be spent to achieve those goals somehow. Whether or not it's in the irrigation system, the landscaping, the customer service, the pickleball, all of these items are going to require extra money to be able to manage them effectively. I don't see that the fitness room expansion, cabana expansion, pool expansion, or needs are going to fit within the framework of the existing monetary structure. There's going to have to be some understanding at some point in time that we're going to have to spend some money. How much? I don't know, but I think that we have to really understand that. I mean, just to get somebody in here to figure out structurally and design wise, we're going to have to hire an architect or an engineer to be able to come in here, map out the place, and then be able to do that. Now we could utilize somebody like Rick Filoramo, who did the pickleball courts. Maybe he'd be willing to come in and do that. However, if we were going to change it and get permitting, we'd still have to go back through all the engineering and get those stamped and sealed. But we could, those are ways that we could at least explore those possibilities. At some point in
Well, I
time, the
think
money's just gonna have to come
that's
into
the
play.
exact word. I think we need to explore it. We're not saying we're going to haul off and do this. I think we have to explore it. It's been a concern in the strategic plan, and we have to look into that. I mean, we could spend up to $150,000 to $200,000 just on the pickleball courts. We didn't go to the community for that. So I'm saying that I think we've got a need and we need to explore. We're not saying we're going to absolutely do it, but there may be ways that we can wrangle this.
Linda?
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, do we have to keep cleaning the fitness room for an hour every day? We didn't do that before COVID. Is that necessary? That takes away 7 hours a week of fitness time. Secondly, when I go down there in the afternoon to play cards, it very seldom has more than four or five people in the afternoon, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It's not heavily utilized even in season during that time. So if you could get rid of that hour a day cleaning and I don't know, somehow encourage them to use it more in the afternoon. But the multi-purpose room is precious to this community. When we had our chat session, all the chairs and the tables were set up. There was another meeting going on in the bar. We get to there to play cards. Where do we have to go? Multi-purpose room. During season, art, 4 or 5 tables of mahjong. If there's a health fair, if they've rented out the space to a convention or a conference, whatever comes in a teaching class for a day or two, we have no place to go. We have members of this community that don't play pickleball, they don't play tennis. You know what? They play games and they play cards, and they need that multi-purpose room. So I am so opposed to even looking at that room that I can't put it in words.
Yeah. No, I think that Paul reinforced that as well, Linda. So I think that's a good point. The multi-purpose room has multi-benefits, and so that's not something that you want to just give up for expansion of the fitness center space.
I'm gonna be contrarian number 2 here.
Okay,
Mark? Mark, you there?
I'm here.
I'm contrarian number 2. Maybe I'm just getting too old. I don't know. All this exploration, it takes time, takes effort. And if you're going to explore, you're probably going to have to spend some money just to explore. You can't make it up out of your head. And I'm just concerned that we've got so much exploration in this document that we've got so much that I think it's too much. And I feel on many of these things, the answer is going to be from the community. Yeah, I'd love that, but I'm not paying for it. So I'm really concerned that we're going to do a lot of exploration for naught. So in a way, Mark, I'm being a contrarian here. That's
Chap,
all.
I'm contrarian number 3. I agree with everything Mark and Chap just said.
yeah, except it's almost a defeatist attitude if you say that if the community's not going to want us to spend money, then we shouldn't even try to look at how to continue to grow and evolve the community.
Right, that's
So
all.
then you're going to be falling behind as a function of time.
You can call it defeatist, you can call it practical.
But Jerry, look at things in the prospect of non-discretionary and discretionary. Things that are really needed that have to be done regardless of how people feel about it. And most of the things on this list are, I call discretionary. They're wish lists or want. And yeah, everybody wants them. I'd like to have a Rose money to buy one. So that's feel like, anyway, I agree with what Chap and Mark kind of said. We have to be realistic.
Well,
But again-
don't take my comments as saying that we
No.
shouldn't do them. I'm just saying that the current state of affairs is that seems to be a feeling. However, as times change, as the club demographics move, and I think what we saw in the demographics from this survey was 29% of the individuals felt that there was something needed to be changed. So if that 29% grows to 45 or 50 or 60%, then change will probably occur. Now, Brownie, whether or not you, Chap, and I are still here, that I'm just saying I think that what the strategic plan is, it puts things on the table. It allows us to look at them. It may say, yeah, it's going to cost 50 grand to look at the ventilation system and redo the whole area in the fitness center, because we got to take it apart from top to bottom and redo it. Everybody's going to go, let's hold off on that. We're not going to spend that money now. I think you're right that we should look at some things and decide whether or not they really are truly at the top of the list to get done, or if they should be looked at in 2 to 5 years. And as the needs from the community starts to vocalize, in 2 years from now, we do a survey. How do you feel about these areas? And if it comes back up to the top and they say, get it done, we're willing to pay for it. Well, that's a whole different world.
Go ahead, Brownie.
One of the problems I have with the survey, the thing that is
Prioritize.
very top, if we asked it the right way, is the HOA dues. Do you want to increase HO dues 20% in the next 5 years? Or do you want to have a second pool or do this? I don't have any doubt how that answer would come out. And that's one of the problems I have. Nowhere in the survey did we put in the cost aspect. And even at my chat section, several people brought up that very point about HOA dues is probably their top priority, okay? So that's one of the problems I have is everybody would like to have everything until you start talking about more money. And everything on the list is more money.
Now,
So
one
how,
last thought.
how does the board interact with the community then? According to that philosophy, we just should do nothing, not explore anything, and just keep dues down. And that would be our function.
And that may be as far as long as doing necessary things to keeping the quality of the community the same, that could be an approach.
Now,
That's what I was fearful of.
Do you think?
All we're doing here is
Ongoing
exploring.
We have no more land, everything is full. So, I mean, it's not realistic to think that we're always going to be expanding.
now the thing to keep in mind, one last point that I will add is that let me indicate for some of these things for the exploration over the next 2 to 5 years, based on current turnover, in 5 years, about 50% of the community will be new. It's, you know, right now you're about 10% a year is our new members coming into the community. And so, you know, you go out 3 to 5 years, there's a significant proportion of the community that are newer. And we know the trend is that newer members are a little bit more willing to spend money and have changes made to meet their needs in the community.
I haven't seen that or heard that. We didn't ask that directly on the survey. I saw nothing that really said newer people supported HO dues going up more than older people.
No, they're more supportive of changes. You're right, Brownie.
Yeah, but
We
that
didn't ask
doesn't mean they're more
specifically.
supportive increasing HOA dues more than the people who are already here.
Yeah.
I think the new people coming in, you know, I could argue the other way with the state of the economy. New people might be the other way around as far as it comes to the economics. I don't know that, but the I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, we'd have an easy job if all we did is not spend any money and just fix things that are broken. And we meet every month, and that's all we would do. But I think this process suggests something differently. And I think it suggests that we're being responsive to the community and we're exploring avenues that would better the community. And it seems to me that that's what the function of the board should be.
now, 3 other areas for long-term examination is some changes, modifications to the front gate. Maybe an addition of a walking gate access to the rear gate. That would probably be in conjunction with after changes are made to Old 41. And then increased lighting to enhance safety in some of the primary crosswalks, specifically the one going from the condos to the clubhouse.
I would take out one thing in 216.
Yeah,
For a visitor, there's not a single place in town that has an entrance that the big trucks can get in. I don't see any reason to even consider that. They can always drive in the around. So even having that on the list is a good example, something I don't think we should even explore. Now, as far as having the tiles match, that could be okay, but we're not going to spend a couple $100,000 so a few trucks can get in every now and then when they can drive around right now. That's the type of thing I'm talking about.
yeah. Okay,
Does anyone else think we really ought to increase that and so trucks can come in without having to go, you know, drive to the other gate? I don't think there's a development in town that has that I know of.
Brian, I'm on a love fest with you. I mean, I agree.
and then we got creative in 2.19. Explore use of a shuttle cart to alleviate some of the parking congestion during peak times as something that might be needed going forward.
Well, help me on this. Shuttle from where to where?
Well, that would have to be established, you know.
Well,
where
no.
pickup
Give me
points
an
would be.
example. It's a shuttle from where to where?
You would start at the clubhouse and you would tour the community in each neighborhood and pick up people who need to come to the clubhouse area in particular, to meet people, to gather at the pool, whatever, pick up meals at the clubhouse, but essentially create a service for those that are relatively immobile.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Again, my personal opinion, those three things could be taken off the list. We've got enough to do with even thinking about those things.
Right, but some of those things are longer term. We're not talking about anything that's gonna happen in the next 24 months. It's longer term. We just keeping our eyes on, this is something that we've identified we might want to look into in the future.
And if somebody buys an electric car, they can put in their own charging stations. We don't have put in pumps for people that have regular cars. So again, that costs money. So I don't even know why we even consider that, even have it on the list.
Well, there might be grants to do that where it wouldn't be a cost at all to put in charging stations.
Brownie, I would disagree with that.
How are you gonna do, there's a million questions. Somebody buys an electric car, they should put in a charger in the car, in the garage. In the condos, they can do it for each building, which I understand some have done, maybe are doing. But I don't know why we should provide public charging stations within the community. We don't put in pumps for gasoline, and, you know, that's.
I would disagree with that.
Possibility, okay?
Go ahead, Ray.
Question
Probably
here.
in 5 years, electricity might cost as much as the gasoline anyway.
Go ahead, Rick.
Last week, Mary Barr, the CEO of GM, said that they were going to be manufacturing 400,000 electric vehicles between the fourth quarter of 2022 through 2024. Also, GM and Ford now are having a joint venture with Tesla, where Tesla's chargers are going to be adaptable for GM and Ford vehicles. And I think, Linda, you indicated that that was one of the major points that people were asking about. Do you have electric vehicle charging? Is that correct? You mentioned that?
I mentioned that it's on the MLS form that we have to fill out when we put down all the amenities of a listing. And
Right.
up until 2 years ago, that wasn't on there. And
Well, there's
now
a
it
reason
is.
that it's on there is because more people are demanding it. And I think we have to be up to speed with the rest of the communities that are there. It's being,
Right.
providing a service, and I don't think it's going to cost a lot.
No, and I think it wouldn't be on the MLS if other communities didn't already have it.
Exactly.
I don't know anyone that's bought an electric car that doesn't put a charging station in their home, period.
You're not talking about the people in their home. You're talking
No,
about visitors that come to your
we're
house.
talking about guests.
Why should we provide fuel for their car for a visitor, okay?
Again,
That's
we're
not our
not making,
responsibility to do that, okay?
we're not making a decision today. The point
I
is,
don't even think it
we
should
know
be-
that electric vehicles are increasing dramatically over the next 5 to
We
10
got
years.
millions of gas. We don't put in a pump station. You know, it'd be more convenient if I went down and filled up my car with gasoline instead of driving up the street. There's no reason an electric car can't do the same thing.
Again, we're not making a decision on
I
whether
disagree.
to add them or not today.
And who's gonna pay for it? You're gonna have to have some way, a system of collecting for it. We're not gonna provide it free.
It's simply taking two parking places that we have and adapting it. You go over to Bonita Bay, they've got 4 of them. I'll bet you I could drive around most of the communities in town, you're gonna see more of them
But
too.
who pays for the electricity?
All right,
Yeah,
why don't we,
We're
why
not
don't
gonna
we,
debate the
It's-
merits of it
Pay
today.
for fuel for people to buy an electric car? Do they have meters on them where you actually put in your credit card and you can do that?
Yes, absolutely. There's a
But
couple.
we're
different
not, we're
ones.
not having that discussion today, so we're gonna move on.
right,
For irrigation, we have not added any action items, but you have this, you're well down the road as to the steps in this process. So while it's important enough to be a key strategic priority, and it's the one that's most urgent and immediate in terms of action. We haven't listed any items, and that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that we are all in agreement that we list irrigation as a focus of the board, as a strategic priority, but we don't feel a need or comfortableness listing some specific steps that still need to take place. And I've highlighted in yellow here, create communications on need, value, urgency, and benefit, because you're getting to the point where the next critical juncture will be, how do we ensure a successful vote? And that is, what is our plan to communicate in a repetitive basis so that our message is clear, understood, and the case is made clearly that members should vote for the assessment to put in a new irrigation system. So my question to you today is, do we need to discuss this and add action items, or are you comfortable with how it's going so far and what needs to be done?
Well, I don't think we need to add anything until we get to July. What is it? July 16th or whatever?
17.
Find out what the vote is.
17th. Yeah.
At that point, we regroup.
Okay.
And for now, nothing.
And for my benefit, what happens on July 16th? You make the decision to go forward with a vote or not?
Yeah, the vote comes in, yes or no,
I
Okay.
think it's the 17th, I mean, Jim.
17th.
So once you make that decision, then you have to come up with a communications or marketing plan of sorts, which will be a campaign to get people to vote as the board desires on this issue.
No, we don't need it. That's already done.
Okay, good.
If the,
Yeah.
if the community's voting,
Oh, the vote
Starting-
is actually-
Starting June 24th.
Okay,
starting June 24th, whether or not they want to do it.
okay, I see, okay. All right, so then we won't add any action items here. This is gonna be decided by the end of July. You'll know the outcome. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Landscaping was an issue that was, had a lot of interest in the survey. We added a number of items here. Some of them were carryovers from the previous strategic plan. So what I wanted to do for some of these items is to make sure that the wording is still accurate and that the parties responsible are accurate. So 5.1, establish a long-term plan for common areas, landscaping, and hardscaping. And this will be the landscaping committee working with the landscape company and the general manager to come up with a plan to be approved by the board of directors over the next year. Is everything there make sense and is accurate to you? Is this something that the landscaping committee is working on? Do you know?
In terms of a long-term plan,
Yeah,
your question is, are we working on that? The answer is no.
okay. So then within a year might be optimistic, it might be the charge of the committee next cycle that you want them to develop this long-term plan.
Well, if that's something that the board wants us to do and thinks it'll end up in some useful information, we would take that order and try to do it.
Okay,
Right now, we're focused on 5.1A.
right. And then we look at some of the others that related to a 5.1B. You know, part of the long-term plan would be soliciting input from outside experts. You've done an arborist study recently, and so you would incorporate some of that information, as well as some of the free services that are available from the Native Plant Society or Collier Extension Services, for example. So it'd be soliciting input from outside others.
Yeah, well, right now I can tell you, I mean, at the next board meeting, you're gonna be asked, the board's gonna be asked to approve the first 2 or 3 items that the landscape committee wants to undertake, going back to 5.1A, okay? In terms of 5.1B, just a couple comments. I think it would be nice to see what this arborist study is. I've never seen it.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mark left the room because I think he has information on that.
We make heavy use of the landscape company's expert opinion. We are not in contact whatsoever with I guess that's the University of Florida Extension Services, the Florida Native Plant Society, or the Collier Extension Services. We're not in contact with them at all. We rely heavily on the committee's opinion and the expert opinion of Mike at Expert Landscaping. So, other than getting a hold of this recent arborist study,
Oh, here's Mark.
just to see what's there,
Yeah.
this is all ongoing.
Mark, has there been a recent arborist study done?
Yes, and it was just turned in a short while ago.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Mark.
we had a comprehensive arborist study of all the trees within the community. Well, I'm gonna say all the common area trees were done. Hardwood trees, and then, and all trees, they went through the entire, we have that report, yeah. But that's not for that's not for shrubbery.
No, that's just hardwood trees.
Just the trees, yeah. In other words, say, is the oak tree viable? Is it alive? Is it dead? Is it good? Is it bad? But that we don't have it on the shrubbery. And
Well, I think
Was
you
there-
should forward that to me and Linda Moxley, just so we know what it says and whether or not we think it requires some follow-up. Can you do that?
oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who's-
sure.
Thank you.
And was there an earlier commissioned landscaping study that was done a couple years ago?
Not that I know of.
Not truly. We haven't had any, nobody from, the Florida, University of Florida come down and do a study, no. We've had landscaping architects look at, structures and stuff, but nothing like that. So.
Okay.
You had the work of the last landscaping committee that did considerable study and looking at the community. You may want to look at their reports and determine its worth.
Okay. So 5.1, these are all sub bullet points, but the idea was that the landscaping committee would look at the entire community, specifically the common areas, and come up with a long-term plan to maintain and enhance and replace where needed the landscaping using the best information available as to what should be utilized for these replacements using some of these outside available services.
Well, what I'm telling you is if this group of people, go back please to the 5.1. If this board believes that a long-term plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is a valuable use of our time, and likely to produce actionable results. Give us the order and we'll try.
Here's what I'm thinking. Chap, couple examples. There was some concerns about getting native plantings in the community. I'm not sure that worked. It may have, but I don't know. I don't know if the current landscaping committee knows. I think that's one
Current
thing to
landscape
plan.
committee has no interest in that. What we're
Okay.
interested in, plants that thrive.
Right,
Plants that thrive, native plants are desirable, but not required.
right. So in my mind, I have a comment with what I heard earlier and what I'm hearing now. I think as part of the plan, you need to state exactly what you just said. Secondly, we've noticed after almost 30 years now, we have some pretty bony plants. A lot of the trunks that are in existence and many of the shrubs in the common areas in particular. How do we go about preventing that in the future? And do we have a replacement plan for many of these shrubs that are frankly just quite scrawny right now? Is there a plan for that? I guess that's the two most salient things I have in my mind. These are just examples in terms of a plan and what I would be looking for in a long-term plan.
Okay, does that answer your questions? Chat?
I didn't have a question. I just made a statement.
Yeah, okay. But that'd be something that the board might decide to charge the landscaping committee with doing going forward is 5.1. We also talked about the buffers related to all seasons and Versol as something that needs to be looked at. Is that something that's not relevant or it is relevant?
That's not relevant. It's completely mature. It's impenetrable.
Okay. What about enhanced landscaping at mailboxes to the coach homes?
That's been done. That's been done, and I would just say it's probably ongoing as time, as plants mature.
So that's not an issue.
Well, I'd rather hear from Linda and Ken on this issue.
I mean, it is an issue. I just think it's been addressed over time, but I think it's an ongoing issue. It just needs to be maintained and looked at on an annual basis.
Could I add?
Yes.
It looks very nice around the mailboxes. The biggest complaint that we have at the mailboxes is that all the landscapers are notorious for blowing leaves out of everybody's yard and shooting them up to the mailbox area. I don't know why they do that. I've asked them not to, but that seems to be the plan. Other than that, the landscaping around it really does look quite nice.
I guess my point is over the years, it has a tendency to be neglected. And
Yes,
if you think about it, half the community goes to that particular spot almost every day.
right.
And that to me would give it a high priority to make sure that it's kept up.
Not only does it have to be kept up with the landscaping, but it needs to be, those mailboxes need to be cleaned. They get mildew on them, and that's when it looks really bad.
Well, that's not the landscaping committee's concern.
No, but the landscaping looks pretty decent right now.
Good. What about the unsightly white fencing within the community? Is that something that's an ongoing issue or not?
No, I think it is. I take this back to the white mailboxes we had throughout the community. And when we switch to the dark green right now, it was a world of difference. And I don't think anyone would argue with that. And I use it as an analogy to the white fences. Why we have white PVC fences, to me, is abhorrent. But that's my personal take.
What would be the alternative?
Well, I'm gonna, actually, it looks cheap. But I also know it would be very expensive to replace it all with the black. I mean, just take a look at the back gate, how much nicer that looks with the black than it did with the white. I don't know how you go about replacing it and matching it up with what we have in the front.
Well, is there landscaping that can help cover up so you're not looking at it?
Well, we tried that, but now, as I mentioned earlier, we have some bony plants that are very sparse. And the original design was to, control it. But now you see right through it.
So as part of that long-term plan, there should be a plan to replace the scrawny plantings so that there are ones that will do a better job of providing a nice buffer between the in front of the fencing. All right, how about 5.2 and 5.2A? And this is a carryover from the previous strategic plan, but providing some guidance to residents on how to maintain their landscaping and what is their responsibility, what they can and can't do, and how to best maintain the hardwoods on their property. So look at 5.2 and 5.2A. Is this something that is needed, some type of documentation that can be shared with residents?
That's an ongoing ASC situation. They've been discussing it lately. They're actually probably will bring new guidelines and possible new recommendations to the board about their landscaping on their property. And I think that that's forthwith. It's going to be within this year that they'll probably bring it to the board with changes on that.
And
I don't know what about some of the others, like what recommended plantings. The only thing we can do is provide them with a list of items that we know will satisfy not only the county, but satisfy, the type of environment we live in,
But this is focused on some type of a handout of sorts, a document that can be shared. So whether that's going to be created by the ASC or not, so that a homeowner knows what they can or can't do to make sure they're in compliance with the ASC.
there's an enormous amount of information on that currently on the website.
Okay. So that they don't need a document, they just need to know where to go on the website to see that. Correct?
Yeah, we're trying to cut down on paper. It's not doing very well though.
So my question then is 5.2 and 5.2A, if you feel like that is well under control, then these aren't needed to be listed.
Well,
2A isn't, only because we don't have the irrigation to be able to maintain that consistency throughout the community on an ongoing basis with the system that's currently in place. So that's kind of moot in my opinion, because if you're on city water and you are gone for the summer, you turn your irrigation system off, looking for the rain to come. This whole week we're at 105 heat index and there's not a drop in water in sight.
No rain.
Smoking. So
All right, so my question is, does everybody agree that we should eliminate 5.2 and 5.2A? Okay. All right, 5.3 and 5.4. 5.3 is worded pursue refurbishing and extending the preserve walk through fundraising and grant initiatives. And then 5.4, revitalize and enhance the marsh area by working with Cuyahoga County and the Southwest Florida Water Management District to gain needed approvals. So most of those things we've talked about quite a bit in one of our first meetings, and they're included here on the plan.
5.4 will be brought up at the June 22nd meeting for action.
Good. So that's.
Are we in compliance now, Mark?
We've been in compliance the whole time. In fact,
Okay.
when I went back and found out about the code violation from the county actually rescinded the code violation and said there wasn't anything there that was wrong. So it was all a misunderstanding. And but the want and need from the community of condo owners has been and is still a priority in their minds. I think the board
Right.
tacitly agreed to look into it. So I will present 3 quotes to the board on the 22nd to implement some of those changes that they were looking for in the marsh area.
Good.
All right, is there anything else with landscaping that we need to focus on that we haven't yet? All right, let's turn our attention to staff customer service. We did a good job of identifying deadlines and accountability for these areas, and some of these have already been achieved. 3 modules of customer service training from the PEO provider, 6.2, taking Dale Carnegie customer service course. All will be done this summer.
Yep.
Conduct a pulse survey of residents. That could be just sort of ongoing. Do you have plans to implement some more pulse surveys next season, Mark?
Probably next season. I don't know. Will. It's so I'd have to wait until sort of
Yeah,
after season to find out how everybody felt about whether or not they're doing it. You know, that's
right.
I would look for improvement in those results though.
Good. All right, 6.4, conduct assessment of staffing needs, including job titles and responsibilities. With that would be space allocation. So, you know, to provide better customer service, we also need to look at the staff size. We had 8/123 on that, Mark, in terms of doing an assessment of staffing needs. Is that realistic?
I can only tell you that what we've really understood in here is that regardless of what we want to do, we're going to have to create space for somebody at some point in time. And whether or not that's a place for the copy machine, the office supplies, the how it's going to work, we are going to need to make some changes to the existing environment. We just can't sit them in the lobby. That's you know, they still have to have the functionality of having a phone, a computer, an ability to you know, have a desk area. So we know after analyzing this and looking at it that some changes are going to be made. We've made some drawn out some ideas on how those changes could be made. But it's going to, once again, it's going to take money and time and some kind of a company to come in here and remodel or remake the some of the office space and probably take away some of the pro shop space and change the configuration in order to make this a viable enterprise.
Right.
Just trying to stick another body in here to create you know, in a chair isn't going to do us any good at all. So that's the difficulty we're facing at this point in time.
Any other comments with regard to that? We know that, you know, need versus space are 2 main factors in that equation. So Mark is looking into that, and that might involve a more extensive space location allocation examination. All right, 6.5, enhance new member orientation. Who would be responsible for doing that?
Well, theoretically, one of the staff members would be able to give that to them if we had the time and the resources available to that. If not, I think that it'd be great if we could have some form of ambassador, some form of, such as an offshoot of the communications committee, to be able to reach out, say, hi, you're a new member, we're communicating to you to say, how are you? Have you got any questions? This is some of the, give them some, welcome packet to the community from that standpoint. I mean, the welcome packet that we give to everybody is basically, here's how you get into the community, make reservations, get through the gate, but we don't have an in-depth member orientation. I mean, it's, we're different because we're more property management focused
Yeah,
from a majority side than we are, you're a member of this country club, you've just paid a $30,000 initiation fee, and now you're paying dues to belong to the club. Here's our membership director. They're going to take you under their arm and give you all, because that's what they do at a country club.
right.
We're more of a property management situation, and the only thing different is that we've had the non-resident tennis memberships come through, but in such droves last year that it made it very difficult for our limited staff to be able to manage them. So I think there is a need for some ambassadorship, some form of communication to those people, but doing it in over more than 15 to 20 minutes is difficult when the only people in the office are who we're talking about right now.
Right, but between a property management and a high entry fee country club, there has to be somewhere in the middle where an ambassador program could provide more of that. Brownie?
Okay, I've made the suggestion before, I'll make it again. I think it would be appropriate, and I would be willing to do, as a board member, to welcome, spend a little time with anyone that moves in. The thing that I find that a specific action item would be to, when each new owner comes in, we put out a notice, when someone passes away or leaves, we put out a notice. When a new member comes in, we should at least notify the board member, maybe even put out, a community, but certainly and I would certainly be willing to spend half hour, an hour, go answer questions, things that, even though they get the package, really explain things that go on and answer questions. But what I don't have is when someone sells a property, who the new owner is and that type of thing. So I think it would be a good idea to notify the board members when there's new residents, and let the board members either themselves or have their appointments, get someone in the community to kind of look out for the new members for a while.
Is Steve Mara still on?
Good idea.
No, I don't see him. No, I don't think Steve's still here.
Steve was originally on a group, I think out of the communications committee, that welcomed new people and called them in, had a little program information and gave it a personal touch. He was a big proponent of that. I wish he were here to talk about it.
I mean,
How
the
recent
thing would
was
be
that, Paul?
for the director for the area to do it, because that's kind of their contact with the board. Plus, the thing that's missing is when someone sells and who the owner is, I don't know what happens. I walk around and every now and then I meet somebody that I didn't even know was here. So somehow I think we need to communicate to the, at least to the board meeting, the new residents in their area. And I think most board meetings board directors would take it upon themselves to meet the people, okay?
That would help. I agree, Brownie. We've had in the preserve about.
I'm willing to do it. It's
people
not that
turn
many
over in the
people.
last year.
I mean, even if it's 20% a year, that's like 10 or 15 people in my area. I mean, that's no big deal.
So Mark, can the director be notified when there's a new resident in their neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Brown, here we go again, Brownie. I think probably the most effective way to handle this is the way Brownie's describing. If I knew that there was a new resident coming in 5 doors down from me, I'd definitely take it upon myself to go meet them, introduce myself, give them an orientation to the board of directors, ask them if they have any questions. I think that's a good idea. And essentially what I'm suggesting is that rather than establishing some kind of community ambassador program, it might be most efficient to delegate this to the community board member to do.
I'd much rather do that than the chat sessions in a way. I mean, if I can contact every new resident and kind of do that, there's kind of an ongoing communication and they know who to ask questions to without a chat session and stuff. You know, they don't know who the board member is usually.
So do you want to have that in addition to or in place of an ambassador program where?
I don't think we need the ambassador in this. What I'm really saying, the board director can be the ambassador. And let's say if we have a board director who maybe spends only 6 months down here, he could appoint whoever he wants in the neighborhood to kind of do it for him. You know, in other words,
Right. Yeah.
if the board director for some reason can't do it because of their schedule, they can appoint it. They can get someone in their area to do it. I think most of us be able to do that.
To answer your question, Jerry, what Brownie's suggestion is a replacement.
Yeah.
Instead of doing it with an ambassador program that we'd have to create. We already have a possible ambassador program, and that person is the community rep, the community board of directors
Yeah.
rep.
Now,
That should be, so anyway.
yeah, no, I think that's great. That's who better to welcome a new resident than a board director who, you know, represents the community and has that institutional knowledge and can provide answers to a wide assortment of questions. 6.5A, go ahead, Brownie.
I actually do that already if I know there's a new resident, but the problem is a lot of times we have a lot of residents, I don't, particularly, you know, the ones that are close to you, the ones that are a block or two away, you don't know. So, I mean, if I just got the information of new owners, I would do it, even if it's not officially supposed to be done.
Now, I do want to draw attention to 6.5A, that beyond welcoming new members, part of our original discussions was in terms of staff customer service, which is what this strategic priority category is that during peak season, staff is overwhelmed and they don't have the opportunity to provide answers to resident questions when they come in the door. And so there was some discussion of having sort of like a help desk where it could be manned during peak times by a volunteer ambassador who, if a member came in with a question, whether they're new or not, they would be able to provide some assistance and answers for them. Is that something that we want to see continue as a new initiative?
I think all the more we can do is all the better.
Okay.
Rather than toss out anything, I think we combine these efforts.
Good.
It seems to me the communications committee has a role here to play. I think they would welcome calling new people together, maybe one day or maybe 2 days out of season to get them caught up with what's going on.
Now, Paul, let me clarify, because I wrote it, and I'm not quite sure what my rationale when I first typed this. Could be a role for a communications committee if the board establishes this committee. Is there currently a communications committee?
The committee will come together right after we complete the strategic plan.
Okay,
Because I think there are very specific needs in the plan that they could fulfill. So I think that will give a little structure to the committee. So I'm reluctant to call them together until the plan is finished.
right, but this will be, there will be a active communications committee to deal with these issues.
Yes, and I would recommend that they take part of the role here in welcoming new people, and they can create how they want to do that. But I think that would be in conjunction with each board member paying a personal visit and getting to know their constituency.
Good, and I will add that additional item, which was a good addition. Good. Okay, longer term, 6.6, we talked about in terms of enhancing customer service would be looking into adopting a new club management software system. There's products out there that can integrate a number of functions into one system that makes it much more user friendly than the current where you're going to a number of different systems. That would be a longer term project in terms of looking at the costs and the benefits and things of that nature. So you have 6.6A and 6.6B related to that. Benchmarking other clubs in the area would be part of that. Is that something that you'll be working on, Mark, in a year or so?
Yeah, John Mulligan from the Finance Committee has expressed interest in understanding more about it, but this is not a today, tomorrow. This changes would not take place probably for a while. I would say that you just put it on the radar for for a year or 2 or 3.
Okay. Good.
Gary,
Yes.
could I just step back to the last bullet point? The activities committee has a calendar that we work on and all the activities are on that calendar each month. And it says things like what time water aerobics is, and that it's what time, that there's an art class. It mentions the card games, the mahjong. It mentions the dinners, the events, it mentions everything going on in activities each month. If that monthly calendar, of course, we'd have to check with Nicole, but if that monthly calendar could be in every welcome packet, so that the minute they open that packet, they could see what's going on at our clubhouse, their clubhouse now, that they could join in by making a reservation or showing up at water aerobics or coming to the art class or whatever. I think it would make them, instead of stumbling around for a month or two and finding out that water aerobics is every day or whatever, it would be right there in front of them. And I think that would be a good way, or how long the cabana's open, the hours, and that there's food there. I mean, these are things that they may not know. So if that could be done, I think that would really show what our community is offering available for them.
Right. Okay, so we would want to include the activities calendar in the sign up process so new members know how they can get engaged in the community and participate right away.
Yeah.
Good. All right, very good. All right, anything else in terms of staff customer service that we haven't hit upon? We came up with a lot of good items and many of them are being implemented currently in real time. Is there anything else that we haven't touched upon? All right, tennis. We talked about stabilizing membership at a club desired level. My only question to that is, when is that occurring? And when do you want to have it achieved by?
Well, we've already done that.
Okay,
I think this is an analysis and projection for each current year. And when tennis comes up with a plan, an annual plan, that this would be an integral part of the plan.
okay,
There's no guarantee that any given membership is going to be stable. So the plan will address how do they project to keep it stable.
Yeah, you're using stabilization as up and down. I was just thinking what we've done is stabilize the limit. I guess we haven't, you're talking about, and that there's some concern that the problem in stabilization might be with the change of doing away with the amenities for the tennis members, that we may have a problem with the lower end of membership, okay?
Yes, it may fluctuate, it may go up and down. We know that many members came over this year because their clubs were wiped out for whatever reason. Now they may be intact again, and we may lose those members that came here.
right.
So how will the tennis committee go about stabilizing that membership? Will you do more advertisement? Will you offer promotions? Will you do whatever to make sure that we have a healthy membership?
Good. We talked about the importance of maintaining tennis staff as a key going forward, and uphold the quality of the tennis facility as a key going forward. And then establishing membership fee levels to maintain profitability of the tennis program. Was there any other tennis items that we should be discussing that we have not added under this? We wanted to have tennis as a key strategic priority because it's the essence of the club, and we don't want to not have it as a key strategic priority because it's so prominent in who Sterling Oaks is as a community. It's a tennis community. So, but we didn't add a lot of action items. So my question is there anything that we did not discuss that should be on this list?
You know, it's interesting. I was actually out last night sitting by someone at the bar who was a tennis player, and he asked where I lived, and it was Sterling Oaks, and his immediate reaction is, he says, I played some at Sterling Oaks with the league. It's certainly the best facility in Naples. And that's, I just like to give, some people don't understand that I think the reputation of the tennis program at Sterling Oaks does add, maybe it's intangible, but some value or reputation to Sterling Oaks.
That's good feedback, especially when it's unsolicited from an outside community member, that that reputation is so well established among the tennis players of Southwest Florida.
Yeah, and this was someone I never met before. He just
Yeah.
happened to be sitting next to me at the bar. Okay.
All right, now the last area we haven't discussed this morning to review and to edit as needed is the food and beverage opportunities. So 3.1, we decided we were going to extend the cabana hours to 11 to 7 during peak season. And we would implement that next season. The only caveat to that was that 3.1A, when dining room is open, the cabana will be bar and only a limited menu only. And during peak times, we said that we're going to utilize a second bar more frequently next season. Any comments on 3.1, 3.1A, 3.1B? We also said 3.1C, we were going to explore using available green space to expand seating in the cabana area. So no comments on any of those, 3.1. So that'll be a big addition to address the
Remind me, 3.1, what,
extending the cabana hours to 11 to 7 daily.
no, about the green space one.
That's 3.1C, explore using available green space to expand seating in the cabana area.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. I thought our,
Remind me what we talked about there.
I thought the first thing was maybe if we can explore the cabana to have some cooking facilities.
That comes up. We haven't, I'll get to that in a moment, Brownie.
Okay, that's what,
Yeah. Mark,
I
can
think
you add to the green space?
what I'm saying, that would be me a higher priority than more seating area if there's a certain amount of space.
I don't know, as familiar with the green space. What is the green space, Mark?
I don't know what it is either.
I thought that there was a comment made by people saying that, and maybe Steve Morrow, well, he isn't here, but Steve and the pool committees basically said, why don't we, you've got all that area outside the pool, why don't you put tables and chairs out there so you can feed them too? So that people don't have to sit inside the pool area. Only
Okay.
that's increased traffic, that's increased staffing needs, that's increased, making sure that you're gonna move some of the existing furniture out to that area, and then you're gonna provide new furniture inside, so. I don't know whether or not that's gonna be, the deadline, it may not be this year, maybe.
Right, so that's longer term. And that would have, more costs attached to it.
Did I step out of the room when this was discussed? I don't
Again, I'm just recording things, so
recall.
if you tell me that was inaccurate and we need to eliminate it, I'm totally on board, so I'm hearing
Well, how do
things.
the rest of you?
I think it was a pool committee recommendation that we start utilizing the seating area outside on the new paver and green space for food service. And that was just, whether or not it's feasible is another question.
Well, why don't we leave it? And again, we're exploring it. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to do it, but I would hate to upset the pool group. And it's too bad Steve is not here to explain this. But why don't we leave it? And I don't think it'll do any damage, but I'm not really hepped up on the idea.
3.2, we wanted to look into, Dr. Coyle has suggested the food truck idea. So we wanted to look at maybe using an outside food truck on evenings to provide food service to the cabana next season.
That's being looked into. We're trying to find the truck that will come in here to do that. Nikki's got several leads on that, so I would say that's probably gonna happen. Whether or not it's gonna happen every night or whatever, but we'll definitely try to do it during season to see how it works.
Didn't we also discuss possibility of buying a food truck?
Right, so that's 3.3. Explore feasibility of purchasing own food truck to provide grill and food services to cabana. And
We've looked into that too. We can buy a used food truck for anywhere from 25 to 50,000, but to outfit it and get it ready to go for the needs that are going to be done. Most food trucks in the reality of the world, unless they're doing one thing, such as tacos, barbecue, a burger, something else, and that's what they do. But to be a multi-purpose outlet for what this club would need, almost every single one of them, you're gonna be investing over $100,000 at the end of the day to make sure that you have the proper ability to manage that that need, because you're gonna need storage space, freezer, cooler, information, places to put that stuff, and you'd still have to be able to have that. So it's an investment that wouldn't be necessary. It may be better to start looking at local food trucks first to see how that's responded to before we make any major investment on our part.
So next season, you would look into bringing in an outside food truck to see how that works. We do acknowledge that there's a minimum guaranteed, so that might have to be subsidized. But then based on the success of that, look more intensely at whether the club wants to pursue purchasing a food truck to provide a kitchen services to the Cabana area on an ongoing basis, knowing that that would have not only the cost of retrofitting a food truck, but then storage costs and staffing costs attached to that as well.
So the question arises is, if you want to put down and then change the way that the Cabana is utilized from an ongoing standpoint for bar and food service, do you want to put your money into that area to expand it, to make it better? Or do you want to buy a mobile food truck that may or may not go? I would say that the feasibility for the amount of money, you probably want to go towards the in-house situation that you could manage more efficiently.
And that's 3.4. So based on the success of expanded Cabana hours and changing community demographics, revisit long-term plan for expansion of the Cabana facility to include expanded bar service, a satellite bar, more seating and space, and a kitchen. And I put 3 to 5 years there. So even though we've talked about that on a repeated basis in the history over the last 10 years, we know that it has not gone away. And with the changeover in the membership as a function of time, that over the next 3 to 5 years, that may need to be revisited once again.
My feelings on that at the end of the day are, there's a difference between the pool, its social activities, its ability to have food and beverage, and then a place for people to dine outside during season. They don't need to be at the pool outside during season because they're not jumping in the pool at night. They're there to have a casual outdoor dinner. So I think the impetus, if it's going to move forward, needs to look at an outdoor dining facility that's not necessarily completely umbilically tied to the pool itself, as the pool is overcrowded anyways. There's no reason to exacerbate that situation. If you had a high quality bar and grill down there, you'd have to have the seating for it. You'd really make it, as Lindia said, well, the people love to go to the pool because there's a way to get food and drink there. You can only imagine if we really had a high volume food and drink area, the amount of people that want to be there as well. So I think there has to be some real investigation on how to make that work efficiently, so that we're not making, ourselves, boxing ourselves into a worse situation than we already have.
And again, those are all important considerations, but that's something that we're not going to be looking at over the next year. That'll be a longer term re-examination. All right. Other longer term food and beverage operational issues is, at some point, we're going to need to look at the kitchen itself and its layout and the equipment needs and how to get the best utilization of the kitchen space. And that might be something that we would do with any re-examination of the cabana and an expansion of the cabana, whether it's at the current location or a new location. That might be also a time to re-examine kitchen space needs in the clubhouse itself. So that's 3.5. 3.6, just reinforce that having outside events, especially on Saturday nights, is an important fee generating activity that benefits the club and all of the members in helping to hold down any increases in HOA fees. And so this 3.6 is just simply the benefit of communicating, making sure members know that these outside events are important and are available if they want to have a wedding or a party or something and use the facilities for those type of activities. Now, not listed here, we also said that regarding clubhouse dining, the current schedule is something that we are happy with and makes the most sense, and we want to continue doing what we are already doing in terms of days and types of clubhouse dining. But since that was just continuing to do what we're already doing, I didn't list that there. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and I think the only change to that, if we, that we discussed was, we're gonna probably try to enhance some of those interior events and bar use to accommodate more of the demographics of the community. So that's ongoing.
By that, you mean the type of theme or food options or something like that?
Yeah, instead of having just, always having the kind of, if we want to call it the à la carte dining on Friday nights, we're gonna try to do, Wednesday or Tuesday, where it's gonna be a little more of a wings and things. We're looking into trying to figure out whether or not we can get sports network, because like Direct TV had a NFL package. I think YouTube has the NFL package now. Something to give us a little more broader demographic base to pull them into the clubhouse on certain times during season. Whether or not how that's going to work, because we only have one room and it's used for many things. But we're going to try to enhance that, just to try to get more people from the community into the clubhouse as well as outside.
Okay, I'll make sure to add that. Good. All right, that's a good addition. All right, anything else with food and beverage? Lindia. You're on mute, Lindia.
I'm wondering if, and I've had people talk to me about this, that when the cabana closes, is there any way the bar can be open more?
The clubhouse bar or the
clubhouse bar. When the cabana closes, say it closes at 4 o'clock, is there
Closes
any
at
way
7.
that the clubhouse?
Go ahead, Mark.
We're gonna
close at 7, Lindia.
You're talking about January, right?
We're talking about January.
Okay. So January, so we're only doing these things for these 3 months, is that it?
That's all the time that people are here.
Well, Brownie likes to go to the bar.
You'd be alone.
So, okay, so it's going to be open to 7, so we don't have to worry about the bar inside, right?
That's right.
Okay.
We'll have the bar open for these other nights, such as on, Tuesday or Wednesday, as well as a Friday.
All right. We reviewed all the items that we've recorded over the last 4 sessions to create this strategic plan, but I wanted to ask all of you right now, is there any areas that we haven't touched upon that should be included in the strategic plan that is missing currently. So is there anything that you think, based on the survey and focus group reports, that we haven't addressed? I personally don't think so. If you look at the items that came out the strongest on the survey, the only thing I can think of that's not listed here would be sustainability, which we acknowledge is just an ongoing effort and it's hard to define specifically. So we didn't include that as a strategic priority. And of course, the way it was worded on the survey, everybody would say they were for sustainability, who would be against it. And the only other thing that we didn't address was renter reforms. Now, you feel comfortable that some of those items are being addressed currently, and there was a vote early in the spring that sort of provided feedback on where the community stands with regard to some more significant changes with renter reforms. But that was the only other area on the survey that was listed as important, that adherence to regulations and rules by renters and owners who are renting their residences, that we don't have in the plan specifically.
That was one of the highest rated items, wasn't it?
Yes.
So maybe if nothing else, maybe we ought to at least define what renter reform means.
Was that in this survey or the last survey?
It was in both. It was actually the same question.
Was it, and was it as high this time as it was the last time?
Or so.
No, I don't know. I thought it was the other way around.
I'm looking at it.
And were they more concerned about adherence to the rules? Or were they talking about how the renters are supposed to be managed?
More adherence to the rules, greater awareness and adherence of community rules by renters and owners renting their property. And that was not on the 2020 survey, so it was new to this survey.
So Brownie, my understanding is what we have more of is owners who rent don't obey the rules as much as the renters do obey the rules most of the time. Because I'm finding more and more of these new homeowners that are having their place put up for rent don't seem to be in tune with the rules and regulations as much as the renters are when they come in, because they have to go through a vetting process. They have to go through an initiation process of sorts. They have to be welcomed in. They have to come up and get their cards. They have to get all their information. Whereas some of the new homeowners never step foot in the office or on property whatsoever. They buy sight unseen through a realtor, then they put it up and have it for rent. Case in point is down there by Fizette, next to across the street from you, Brownie, the new guy that bought in over there. I think that we should probably look at that situation as how do you communicate effectively to the new homeowners what the rules are, even if you're not going to be a part of the community, you're there as an investor only.
Was this new one you're just talking about, was this an investor?
Yes,
Mark?
yes.
And when did this happen?
About 2 or 3, 4 months ago, he bought right across from Brownie, next to Jeannie San Giorgio.
Yeah,
And immediately I got phone calls
3 months ago.
from 2 or 3 of the people around there, all saying, what's going on? This guy isn't doing what he's supposed to. He's got this and that going on. He's got, this is the guy that had the open house with the tents in his yard and all this kind of stuff. So we definitely just need to be able to maybe have that as part of the communications package. Maybe you can fold that in, Jerry, as you have some way of folding
Sure.
that communications to new homeowners. Like Brownie said, if you're a new homeowner, maybe we can get something to them ASAP about that. I mean, they get a whole laundry list of information, but they're not welcomed in or talked to specifically.
Well, this guy's an absentee owner. He's not here at all during the year.
Almost all of the investor owners are that. The person that Mark Clerico's up in the other end of Sanctuary Point, same thing. Barely stepped foot on property, immediately got a company to come in and clean, paint, go, and the sign was up the next day for rentals. And Rita Green and David Levin started calling me immediately about how the place was being managed. Nothing was going on. And he couldn't get a hold of the homeowner because they're in New York or Philadelphia or wherever they're from. So I think that this is that's just indicative when they talk about rental reform. I think it has to do with how communication is made to the owners, not so much the renters. We've had a couple of bad renters. And we continue to have some issues with some, but it's mostly stems from the homeowner not adhering to the rules and passing those down to the renters more than it is the other way.
So under the area of new member orientation, I'll include a sub action item that says as part of that orientation, new owners are educated on renter policies, procedures, and regulations. So that is
Well, I think, and also they have to have the understanding of the neighborhood policies, such as garbage days, ASC modification, landscape, I mean, they really have to understand that when they come into the community, what are the community morals, mores, and its rules and regulations, so that they really have an understanding that what they got and how they manage that. That's all.
No short-term rentals.
No renting until you've owned it for a year.
Lindy is waiting. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Linda. Linda, you're on mute. You're on, okay.
That's why I would propose the 1 year own before you rent, because it gives them people a chance to know the rules of the community. Like the guy next to Jeannie, he didn't have a pool service for a while because he didn't even know he needed one. Now, come on, these people don't. I think he was there 2 days, and then he left, and the renters came. So that's why people put that 1 year in, or even some places put in a 2 year. So they get to know the community, they get to know what your community is like, what the rules are, what the regulations are, because they are just interested in that property for rent. And but it didn't pass, so there's nothing we can do. But maybe you should have to notify the office if you intend to rent. And then they could give you a list of all the rules and regulations. I don't know.
How are you notified of the members going to rent, Mark?
When the renter shows up, when we get the packet from the renter stating that the lease is coming through, or the homeowner says, I've got somebody coming in, here's the paperwork. Or they walk in the door and go, hi, I got the keys. What do I do? I can't get through the gate. And they go, who are you? They go, I'm renting, XYZ. We go, we have nothing on you. So we have to go take them through that process. Yeah, so there is a little bit of that communication to the homeowner that all stems around this rental reform circle.
Sure, to answer your question, when a property is sold or purchased, we don't know at that time whether the buyer is going to live here or is an investor. We don't know. Right, Mark?
That's correct.
Okay, we don't know. And we've we really find out when the crap hits the fan and somebody comes in and says, I got the keys. Now what do I do? Then we know it was an investor.
Yep.
I know when it's investor, when I'm working with them, because the first thing they ask me is, do you have any rule against renting right off? I know exactly what they are. But only
I'm
the
sure you
realtors
do.
know.
I'm sure you do,
Yeah,
but you don't, unfortunately, you don't do all the sales.
I know. That's who knows. That's why I said maybe we should have a rule that if you intend to rent your property, just notify the office. And then the office can give you a list of do's and don'ts or something. I don't know. I mean, we're not a rental agency here at our office. So it's a lot of more work. So I don't know the answer.
Okay, so I'll make sure under customer service, we add an action item under renters as part of orientation to educate owners as to some of the things that we discussed in the last 10 minutes or so.
Last year, we worked on a brochure for prospective buyers and for realtors to explain some of the rules and milieu, if you will, of the community. So maybe we should continue with that project and see if we can't refine it a bit. And as we include things, we can include this renter tutorial.
Good.
Not sure the realtors would use it. But
Oh, but we will have done our due diligence if we get in a hassle with somebody.
right.
Yeah, they can't say they weren't informed then.
Right. And prospective buyers, if they're looking at this brochure, they'll know right away that this is a tennis community. We do not have short-term rentals. We don't allow that. And a variety of other things that we've just talked about. So at least they're aware before they buy.
See, there is a place on the MLS where you have to fill in, are there restrictions on rentals? We put yes. What is the restriction? Minimum of 3 leases, minimum of 30 days. Is there a pet restriction? Yes. Renters cannot have pets. But nobody the owners just do not read that stuff. It's just like they knew they had to pay for the water in Sanctuary Point, but yet they will turn around and say, well, nobody told me you had to pay for water. Well, yes, they did. It was on the MLS form that they, right on the listing that they were looking right at when they bought. So somehow you've got to know who's going to rent. When that lease comes in and you send a note back out to them saying they've been approved or whatever you send out to them, there should be a sheet to the owner of instructions how to rent. I mean, we already know they're going to rent because the lease came in usually.
We
That's
do
what I
all
think.
that. We do all that. You gotta understand, most of the problems that we have are from what Lindy is talking about, is ignorance, apathy, and sheer, I don't care what you say. I don't have to listen to you. I'll go ahead and do what I want. And that's where in the process that we're here, we are I can only tell you the amount of steps that we take in the office, especially with Laura, who handles those. She goes through a myriad of steps on every rental, making sure that every person that's involved in it, whether it's a real estate broker, the owner, and the renter, lessee, have all of the clarification of understanding the rules of the road. That's sent to them and reinforced to them, whether it's pets, whether or not it's numbers of people. And you know what they go, thanks a lot, and walk out the door. we find that 2 days later, that the person that was renting actually is 4 people and they have a dog and then they have 2 cars and somebody else. And because that's just, they're not, and that's when you hear from the survey, when are you gonna start enforcing the rules of the road when it comes to the renters? And that's unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with property management, which, as we talked about here, is that we have the club side, we have property management side. The property management side really has a lot to do with homes, landscaping, ASC, condominiums, renting, all of that goes under property management, that ball of wax. When we get into the middle of the season, we're dealing with a lot of club issues and we have property management issues. We still only have 2 staff today, that's all we've got. So Nikki's in a meeting right now. I'm in a meeting right now. You got Laura and Suzanne, and she's doing payroll and accounting. Laura's alone. If she gets more than 2 people standing at her desk, all of a sudden there's no help for her. Who's going on around here? I can't get anything from the front office. They're horrible. And I think that that's where, we have to look at how to manage this effectively. But there is a little bit of consternation on our part because we know that we really try to do what we can to manage the operation the best we can. It's the outliers that cause a lot of the issues. And of course, as we all know, the most vocal individuals, we have to supply the grease to that squeaky wheel. And that's 5% of the population that we spend 50% of our time on. So that's club life, that's HOA life. We all know that. So.
Well, and then if you look at it from the other point of view, you take a condo person who is living in the condos and they're paying fees to the master of $400 a month, and they're paying $400 a month for their condo fees. They're paying $800 a month, and then maybe an assessment here or there too for the new roof or the pavers or whatever. And then you get somebody move in because the owner rented it, didn't even know the rules, and they're throwing the garbage in the wrong place, and they're bringing a great big Mack truck, and they're busting up curbs. And I mean, it's very frustrating for owners too and neighbors. So anyway, I don't know the answer to it, but I do know it is a problem.
Okay, and again, we're having a good discussion right now. I'll add 1 or 2 action items related to that so that we make sure we include it. But beyond just including it on the strategic plan, we know that a continuation of looking at these renter/owner, more specifically related issues, is something that as a board you're aware of and are focused on. Okay, so we're out of time for today, and today is our last meeting. I think we've done a good job of fine-tuning the strategic plan, clarifying some of these action items. The next step is for me to update the document one last time and add to it in terms of some contextual information that'll go before we get to these action steps, giving a little background on how we got to it in this process. But I want to end by thanking you all. As a board, you made a big commitment to the success of the club by soliciting the input of all the residents, truly listening to what they had to say, and using their input as the driver behind developing your priorities going forward. So that's as it should be, but most clubs don't adhere to it as well as you have. So you are all to be commended. You put a great amount of time into this process, and you've worked very cooperatively together. So hopefully as a byproduct of this process, not only do you have the strategic plan, but you are now all operating on the same page and have a shared perspective through these conversations we've had as we've gone through this process. I will be sending the final document to you over the next week. And other than that, that will conclude this process. Chap, you have something to add?
Yeah, we've got, by my clock, 8 minutes before noon. Jerry, can you off the top of your head, or somebody off the top of their head, refresh my memory with some information about how important from the survey or surveys was the whole subject of fiscal responsibility and or dues? It's got nothing to do with the strategic plan. I got an ulterior motive for answering this question, for asking this question. You know what I'm talking about, Jerry?
Yeah, but as Brownie's pointed out, we did not ask a lot of specific questions with regard to HOA due levels in the survey. So we just have sort of a broad question with regard to costs. So we know that, please indicate how important the following areas are in your decision to purchase. And of those, the second highest, besides location, the HOA fees and financials was the second highest rated item. So we have information such as that talks about the importance of fiscal responsibility, but we didn't have a section of questions specifically focused on that area.
All right, thanks.
We did have the question, how satisfied are you with the value of your club membership relative to your HOA dues and assessments? And that came out as 2.87. So, 11% were not satisfied, 22% were slightly dissatisfied, but the rest were satisfied with the dues level relative to the value that they get. So, 67% were satisfied or extremely satisfied. 33% were slightly dissatisfied or dissatisfied with their dues level in relation to the value they receive.
That's a little bit like asking, how happy are you with your taxes?
Right.
Well, interesting enough, though, when you ask them the question, the reason they bought was because our HOA fees are favorable. That's why they bought here. Location and HOA fees. When you compare them to some other places, HOA fees are high, much higher in many cases. So you really are getting a mixed bag of answers there.
Right. I mean, overall community aesthetics was number 3. Landscaping was number 6. The price, value, and affordability of the residence layout were all, high rated items as well.
Right. That's my,
All right. Any other final thoughts? Because we are ready to conclude this process. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for making your time available and for all your sincere and quality